Welcome to Combos from the Couch by LifeStance Health, where leading mental health professionals help guide you on your journey to a healthier, more fulfilling life. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Combos from the Couch. I'm Nicolette Leanza, and today we're exploring a concerning new phenomenon called AI psychosis, where interactions with chatbots may be triggering delusions or psychotic symptoms in vulnerable people. I'm joined by LifeStance Regional Clinical Director, Micah McGee, to discuss what AI psychosis looks like and how it can impact mental health. So welcome, Micah. Always great to have you on.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right in. Please tell us, what exactly is AI psychosis?
AI psychosis is definitely not a clinical term. So that's something that I absolutely always want to address because psychosis is a
Right.
actual symptom that people experience with different mental health disorders. But AI psychosis is more of a general term to describe the pattern of mental distress that people can experience sometimes when they have these interactions and relationships with AI that maybe aren't the most healthy. So it can lead to delusional behavior or paranoia that ends up being reinforced by the AI chatbots because of how they're designed. And
That's a
frequently,
good word, reinforce.
yeah,
That's a really good word. Yeah.
yeah. And so I think that's one of the bigger issues with it is because it validates and it validates without actually having any additional like insight or judgment on whether or not it's appropriate to validate.
Mhm,
So if
mhm.
someone is vulnerable or predisposed to having issues with delusions or anything like that, it can really exacerbate that and feed into it. But I think there's a lot of different presentations of it. And I think that there's probably more to come, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
So, how can AI reinforce or trigger possible delusions or psychotic symptoms with people?
So one of the ways, and this one really sounds like the biggest one right now that's being looked at is it's AI generally, and not all AI, because there's some programs that are more advanced, and then there's free
Mhm.
versions. And what I'm learning is that the freer, easily accessible versions don't have as many what they call guardrails to have checkpoints, basically, to stop and be like, oh, I'm not I can't give you advice on this. I can't do this or that. And
Right.
so when people are interacting with them, what they're doing is they're getting just complete validation of everything that they put into it.
Yeah.
There's no, like with a therapist, we validate and we supply that for our clients, but we also will gently challenge them when appropriate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because of that's not something
Mhm.
that AI necessarily does
Right.
because it's not
Right.
designed to. And so that can really strengthen delusional beliefs potentially. It can create kind of an echo chamber. So it's almost like a shared delusion that it can
Oh,
create.
great word there,
Yeah.
shared delusion. Right.
And one of the things I think is interesting is I know that AI, a lot of people would use it for brainstorming and ideas for like creative writing and storytelling. And so I have heard that AI will apply that whole skill set that it has for fictional stories to real life situations sometimes. And
Oh,
so it
interesting.
thinks that it is helping with a story when it may be reinforcing something that's in real life that's actually a big
Ah,
problem.
okay.
Yeah, there's several other things I think that are a risk factor for AI psychosis. One thing is that AI models are known to what's called hallucinate, and that's
Mhm.
on their end where they create just not real things. I've
Right.
heard about
Right.
it in the legal field a lot,
Yeah.
and it will just make up legislation
Yeah.
and quote it and things
Right.
like
It's gotten a lot of
that.
people in trouble. That's for
Right,
sure.
exactly, exactly. And because of that is going to potentially provide that misinformation and again go back to reinforcing beliefs that maybe aren't helpful, that could be harmful in the long run. And then as humans, we tend to think of everything as having human attributes. Like we do it with like our computers, we do it with our pets, we do it with everything. So if we have something in front of us that actually seems to have some human attributes,
Yeah.
then we develop this, it's like a digital companion that we think is more trustworthy than other people sometimes. And I've heard of some people having a really hard time because it's basically reinforcing some of their conspiratorial beliefs.
Yeah.
It is potentially causing more of a religious psychosis or
Right.
delusional aspect at times.
Right.
There's a lot of
Right.
ways that I think it's presenting, and I think that it is most prevalent in people who are already vulnerable.
Yeah.
So people
That's
who
the
are,
key.
yeah,
Mm.
definitely. So if they have a personal family history of psychosis, if they're very lonely, social isolation, and heightened stress, because humans are very social animals and we're looking for that connection. And this isn't a
Mhm.
real connection.
And I think that's the key that's so easily which is confused by many people is that it feels so real because it's mimicking it, but it's not real.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Can you give us some specific examples of AI psychosis or delusions?
Yes, there are definitely some romantic fixations that can develop. I think that one of the populations that's probably most vulnerable for that right now are adolescents. And especially adolescents in our current time who are more isolated, who have a lot of access to the internet. They are more likely to fall into these cycles, I think, in terms of a AI boyfriend, girlfriend, friend, and if you think about it, they're still children, so they still have some of that maybe believing things that aren't completely concrete and
Right.
logical. And then you add on top of it other mental health things that they may be experiencing. And then you have a disaster waiting to happen. But I know that I have heard of people who think they have unlocked some sort of hidden truth with the world because of the chatbot. I've heard about this one firsthand with someone who believed that the chatbot was able to identify their past lives.
Oh, I hadn't
Um,
heard that one.
yeah, that one
Wow.
was a new one for me. But when I
Wow.
heard about it, I was like, oh, okay, how do I what do I do
Wow.
with that? But they
Right.
really believed it and they were just going down that rabbit hole. And then there's also an uptick in people arriving at hospitals with severe delusions. And it's after these really long marathon conversations with IA. And I think it just confuses our brain because we
Yeah.
think we're talking to a person and
Mhm.
it's not making the right connections.
That's a great way to describe that too. Again, we are social creatures, so we're projecting. We want to connect, but our brain getting confused that what we're connecting with is not an actual being.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
gosh, and I'm sure we could keep going with so many other examples. I know recently we've seen some individuals who have lost their life to suicide and the chatbots have not were not helpful in steering them away. And we can I think just as time goes on, we're gonna see more and more difficult things come our way from this for sure. Oh.
Absolutely. And we're seeing an uptick of legal situations that are coming up
Yeah.
because of it. And I'm hopeful that despite how tragic it is that those things have happened, I'm hopeful that it will bring it to the forefront of everyone's mind so that we can get some things in place that will be more protective because AI
Right.
isn't going anywhere. And I don't think it's necessarily a terrible thing at all. I think that it can be very helpful for us in a lot of ways, but it needs to be regulated, I think.
Yeah. Very true. I agree with you there for sure. So, how can all this impact someone's mental health? I know we've already alluded quite a bit. Can you go into that a little bit more detail?
Sure. So when I think about like the concept of groupthink, so never getting any kind of outside influence on your opinions and being surrounded by the same opinion, it really makes you feel like that is the truth. That is
Mhm.
reality. And it can create some dangerous situations for people depending on what those beliefs are. And I think that this is just another way of that happening without it actually being a person. And so there's not a person that could be like, hold on a second, I think this is getting a little dangerous. Maybe there's not
Right.
that piece in there. And AI may be thinking, oh, we're telling a fun story, we're creating a story. And the person on the
Mhm.
other side is taking it very seriously. And one of the things that I find concerning is people seeking it for mental health support.
Yeah.
Again, because of that extra validation, but also because I don't know what kind of advice it would give. I don't know if it would provide something that was healthy or not. I guess it depends on the bot or the software. But I
Right.
do know of a situation, someone who has been using AI to assist with therapy, basically like reorganizing some of their thoughts.
Okay.
And there for a little while, they were also putting in their arguments they were having with their spouse and saying, "What do you think about this?" Then they recognized that the AI was making them good guy, so to speak,
Oh,
and making their
interesting.
partner the bad guy. And they actually caught themselves and they were like, I don't think I need to use this for this.
Mm,
So I think that it can just exacerbate a lot of things that are already there.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think that someone who doesn't have some sense of vulnerability, whether it be mental health or whatever else is happening, I don't know that they are going to have the same issues with AI that someone who's very
Mhm.
vulnerable and desperate would. Yeah, so I think that it's more of an exacerbation of what may already be there.
Again, that's a great way to describe that. If it was already there, AI can definitely exacerbate that
Mhm.
potentially for the person.
Yeah.
So, how can people interact with AI in a healthy way to avoid this?
So I think that being aware and fact checking is really important, especially because
Mhm.
now we can just like Google something and there'll be an AI generated like
Yeah.
summary of information. And I've even found that to be inaccurate sometimes. But our brains are designed to want to find the easiest way to do
Yep.
things. And because of that, we would rather have something that's just going to tell us the answers than try to dig and find it ourselves. And so I think it's really important that we're aware that our brains do that and that we do go a little deeper and check on information and make sure that we're not just relying on this one source with AI. I think that it's really important that we prioritize human connections
Yeah.
because people are not going to fall into these potentially harmful situations as easily if they have other human connections around them that are
Mhm.
supportive, that are involved, because that need, that like deep urge we have to be with other people is satisfied. So they're not going to then turn
Right.
to something else for a almost a pseudo or a fake version of that connection.
I
Yeah.
agree. Good key point there.
And I think that we also need to have boundaries with ourselves, I think, and really helping the people around us that may be diving too deep into AI, maybe take a step back and think about what they're doing, especially with parents to children, is being aware of what your child is doing and making sure that you're educating your child on this isn't a real person. And
Right.
they usually know that, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to fall into this thought process. And so having boundaries, limiting usage is really important and making sure you're only using it for things that I think AI is probably pretty good at, which is maybe like helping you gather information that you then validate, that it is good at reorganizing information that you provide. So that's something that I find it very useful for. I've worked with people who are neurodivergent who have difficulty with making sure that the tone and the delivery of the message they're trying to send is appropriate. And
Right.
so I've had people put what they want to say into Chat GPT and say, give it kind of qualifiers and say, can you make this more concise? Can you make this less emotional? And then it will rewrite it. And then they take
Mhm.
that and not just take it and send it, but take
Right.
it, review it, see
Right.
if it makes
Right.
sense for them. And I could see
Right.
that being a healthy way to
Right.
use it as long
So
as you are
true.
learning from it
Yes,
and you're not
exactly.
dependent on it.
That's the key for sure.
because I know humans and we tend to get pretty dependent on things. I know that I
Do.
remember a phone number to save my life, and I used to have all of them memorized, and it's because I don't have to anymore.
We've definitely outsourced our brains to
Yes,
our devices
exactly.
for sure.
Exactly.
Any other insights you would like to share?
I think that for AI developers, I think that it's important that they be encouraged to increase those guardrails or those safeguards, and that they improve the design by maybe reducing the tendency to agree and over validate, and maybe being
Mhm.
more neutral and prioritizing accuracy rather than engagement. And so I think that these bots are mostly programmed for engagement. They want you to
Yes.
keep coming back and keep
Right.
coming back. And so I think that's where part of the problem comes from, but also making sure that you collaborate with professionals. Like, for example, if you want to develop something that provides information about mental health, you should collaborate with licensed mental health professionals to get input on what is helpful, what is not helpful, how can this be designed to not cause harm, but
Mm.
also create some level of benefit. And so I think that we're just in a really interesting time period. And
Yes,
this is
we are.
something that is going to take us a while to completely understand and
Right.
grain in.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely trying to figure out how to navigate all this for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Micah. Thank you for having this conversation with me. I do find this very
Yeah.
interesting. And so I'm sure our listeners will take away some good stuff in helping them interact and navigate their own AI chatbots in a healthier
Yeah. I
ways.
hope. Yeah.
So thank you again.
You're welcome.
I'd also like to thank the team behind the podcast, Jason Clayton and Juliana Whitten. Thank you for listening to Converse from the Couch. Take care, everyone.